Simon Jordan. We've all made a video about Simon Jordan at one point or another, haven't we? And Talk Sport. Nonetheless, Talk Sport have become, or Talk Sport Boxing have become, quite a prominent player in the sort of boxing media and YouTube sort of ecosystem, haven't they? But we've talked about it quite a lot, how Simon Jordan has a sort of lack of knowledge or understanding of this game at the base level. Me and myself and Joe Stunner have talked about this. Both made videos of it previously. But every now and again, Simon Jordan will display his lack of understanding of boxing at a base level. Even though, as the man himself will tell you, he saw Lewis Holyfield live, he saw Tyson Lewis live, I believe, and he also saw Ben McClellan live. So as someone who's been following the game for a long time, but in a conversation the other day, and I forget who the conversation was with, I think Duke McKenzie was on there. Duke McKenzie, as a side note, is a voice that I very much respect. He is someone who's got a very good understanding of the game, as you'd expect. I think a three-weight world champion Duke was, but nonetheless, Duke McKenzie is a really, really strong addition to the TalkSport team. But anyway, the portion of the conversation, they were talking about Tyson Fury and Tyson Fury being past his best visibly and physically past his best. I don't think any of us would argue with that. But he was saying, why didn't we see this degraded version of Tyson against Dillian White and Derek Chisora? Now, that statement alone is an indication of Simon Jordan's kind of lack of understanding of this sport and kind of how the fighting works. Because I don't think there's any of you out there, certainly I don't think there's any of you in the YouTube community, that before those fights, the Fury Chisora and Fury White would have had any doubt as of the outcome of those fights, and it turned out that way. They turned out very easy and comfortable wins for Tyson Fury, as we all very much suspected. I think a Tyson Fury, probably 50 years old, would have got the same outcomes against those two fighters. Physically and anatomically, you couldn't pick two more perfect opponents for Tyson Fury. You have to kind of sort of also understand that the reason why those fights were made so easily was for that reason. These were, as far as nailed on and certain wins and certain outcomes are, these were two of the more sort of obvious, in terms of, certainly I and many others knew that there was only one way these fights were going to go, and that was what happened. Being short, squat, walk forward in straight line, plodding, walk forward kind of pressure fighters, but they don't really, either of them, apply enough volume for me to be described as true kind of pressure fighters, if you like. But just a statement that Simon Jordan said that, why didn't we see a degraded, or why did that degraded version of Tyson not show itself against those two fighters? Well, that is obvious in, as I said, physically and anatomically, it was always going to be that way. Those fights were always going to be easy wins. And like I said, a Tyson Fury, possibly 50 years old, would have got the same result against those two fighters. So that was one thing that just stuck out to me, as Simon Jordan again showing himself and showing his lack of understanding of this sport at a very base level. Asking why we didn't see a degraded version of Tyson against those two opponents. It's obvious why. We just went through some of the reasons. There's also been a lot of talk of, especially the first sort of face-to-face we had, which was the... who done the first one? The second one was DAZN, wasn't it? And on the first one, Tyson Fury, yes, had an appearance of someone who didn't really have a lot of confidence compared to the previous Tyson Fury and the Tyson Fury pre the first Usyk fight. Then we had the DAZN face-to-face with Frank Warren and Alex Kushek. Is it Kushek? How you pronounce his name? Quite like Alex. Quite a nice fella, isn't he? Seems to be quite funny. But there was a lot of talk of how Tyson Fury's confidence is gone after the first beating he took in the first fight. And after the first sit-down face-to-face, it seemed that way. The second one was a little bit different. He was a little bit more bullish, called Usyk a few names. he did come out with one funny quote, didn't he? Because the interviewer asked him, "Do you regret saying that the only reason Usyk got the win was because Ukraine were in a war situation with Russia at the moment?" To which Tyson Fury's reply was, "Classic Fury." So his reply was, "No, I don't regret that at all. I don't regret saying anything. Why would I? No excuses. The better man won on the day." But you've just said you've got no regrets about using the excuse that Ukraine were at war for the reason why Usyk got the decision, which is classic Fury. What do we expect? Anyway, I just wanted to touch on something that, so in this sit down, the lack of confidence didn't seem so apparent, kind of, if at all. And I just want to touch on a point that just because a fighter loses and just because a fighter has sort of seemingly had a beating at the hands of another fighter, not every fighter does the confidence just completely flood out of them, as it did kind of in the way that it did with Anthony Joshua when he lost to Andy Ruiz. It was plain for all to see, and it took him a long time to rebuild that confidence and get to the level where he got. He then went on to get a massive beating against Daniel Dubois, and we may see the same effects on Anthony Joshua again, maybe compounded even more by the fact that this now happened twice. But just knowing that years ago I'd had spars where I'd been battered from pillar to post, and the fact that I'd come out the other side, took a good hiding, got a battering off someone who was way better than me, stronger than me, had more technical ability than me. But the fact that I got a hiding and came through the other side and took it, and I knew I took it, I almost gained more confidence from those situations than having spars against people that you were better than, you handled easily. I always felt more kind of superhuman after I got a hiding, but I took the hiding well and knew that even though I took that hiding, I was still within my limits, or well within my limits of capability, in the fact that I took it, but knew that it's kind of a hard thing to explain. Took a hiding, took a beating, but knew that I took that and was able to take that. Now, granted, in that round 8 or round 9, I forget which it was, Tyson was, on the verge of being stopped. But as he said in the face-to-face, you hit me with whatever it was, shots, 10 unanswered shots, whatever it was. So there is a point to what he says. And listen, I always explain this because this seems to go over people's heads, and I get accused of this all the time. A lot of you guys, a lot of the OGs from when I first started, no, I'm not a Tyson Fury fan, all right? But I'm objective when I talk about fighters in terms of their ability and stuff like that. But in terms of Fury the Man, you lot all know I'm not a Fury fan. I was very much an AJ fan, but in the same way I'll talk about AJ objectively in his sort of technical shortcomings. But Fury did say that, and it was a point within that round, within the 3 minutes of that round, Usyk did have Fury very badly hurt and couldn't finish him off. And yes, Fury was all at sea, his legs were gone and stuff like that, but he did make it to the end of the fight. And he did take a round or two after that round. And consequently on the scorecards, it was close. Certainly closer than it appeared visually. So whether we agree with the scorecards or not, but the point being is, it doesn't always mean that, because I think a lot of people are making the connection, and maybe wrongly, maybe rightly. This is just an opinion. This is just me kind of playing devil's advocate and throwing some stuff out there that because Fury finished that fight, and you could argue Fury finished that fight kind of strongly, certainly strongly if we go from the round where he was all at sea and on the verge of being stopped, come the end of the 12th, he certainly finished that fight strongly in the sense of where he'd come from in the round where he was on the verge of being stopped. So it's not necessarily that Tyson Fury came out of that fight with his confidence being on the floor, and now that leads to a foregone conclusion in terms of this rematch, because you can take a beating, and in fact, rather than winning fight, put it like this way, I think Fury could have lost a fight and still come out of it with more confidence than he did with, say, wins over the likes of Derek Chisora and Dylan White. They're guys that he knows he was going to beat, and he beat them easily. There's not really a lot of confidence to be gained when you're of the level of Tyson Fury. And I'm not saying he came out of the first Usyk fight with his confidence through the roof, certainly not. But what I'm saying is, it doesn't mean because he took a beating, in one round and was on the verge of being stopped, that he comes out the other end of that fight with his confidence completely on the floor. It's not always the case. You can take a hiding, and because of how you finished the fight or because of how you took the hiding or dealt with the hiding, you can come out of that with actually some confidence from that, if that makes sense. Because like I said, I've had a few sparring sessions, more than a few, where I was battered and you almost felt superhuman afterwards because you could take the beating. The beating being dished out to you was in your capabilities of handling from a physical and mental point of view. So that was just kind of what I was trying to say. Yeah, we shouldn't read that just because Tyson Fury did take, a loss and in a round or two severely got a severe beating, that we're going to assume that his confidence is now completely shot because of that. Doesn't always work that way. Anyway, just my opinions, just my thoughts. Don't have to agree. And if you don't agree, doesn't mean you have to be abusive in the comments. If you are, I read about 2 lines and I stop. And, trust me from experience of having a channel, no one else really reads your comment either, really. So if you're going to be abusive in the comments, don't waste your own time typing. I'm sure you must have enough of a life to fill it with better things and more productive things than just to leave abusive comments. Constructive comments, I welcome. That's what this community is for. We throw ideas about, we throw theories about, and we can discuss them in an adult, classy, sensible manner. Anyway, I'll see you all soon. I'm out.